Good morning and welcome back to Planet Althistory. Today we are going to discuss what if the Intermarium formed. The Intermarium is also known as Miedzymorze. It is a Polish political initiative which should include countries that are between the seas. The seas in here are in particular the Baltic Sea and also the Black Sea. The Intermarium can be seen as something similar to the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and the plan was to include countries such as Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Belarus, Ukraine, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania and even Yugoslavia. Piłsudski had this idea because he wanted to secure Poland's position and security after World War I. His concern was that Germany and Russia could team up again and conquer Poland. While Piłsudski later on agreed on concluding non-aggression pacts with Germany and the Soviet Union, he was very invested in this idea of a successful Intermarium. An example of this is that he concluded an official alliance with Ukraine and its leader Szymon Petliura. The Ukrainians hoped to gain independence, hence why they supported Poland in the Polish-Bolshevik War to free themselves from the Soviets. The Polish-Soviet War went in an initial phase very good for Poland, but the ties then turned and the Red Army was knocking on the doors of Warsaw when finally the miracle of the Vistula happened and the Poles were able to beat the Soviets decisively. The Soviets were still busy in their civil war, and Lenin, after the Kronstadt rebellion, urged for a quick peace treaty. There were a number of issues with the peace treaty, however. First of all, the Polish political camp was split in two, those in favor of a federation and those in favor of a nation-state. The latter dominated the political scene and discourse, and as a result, Poland got smaller borders than they could have. The Soviets wanted to make generous concessions, but with the current political climate in Poland of that time, such concessions were rejected. After the peace treaty, Piłsudski had hoped to gain some traction for the Intermarium by making the Baltics and Finland sign the Warsaw Accord, but at the end it failed as well. The only noteworthy success for Poland was an alliance with Romania. But what if all of that changed? What if the Intermarium was formed? As mentioned before, the Polish delegation in the peace conference as well as the parliament rejected bigger concessions from the Soviet Union. The political camp around the nationalists of Roman Dmowski were the dominant force of that time. It makes sense that the ideas of Dmowski were stronger in those years because a bigger Poland would have meant that Poles would become a minority again, and even worse, in their own country. Piłsudski, however, was an influential man, if not the most influential man of that time in Poland. His ideas were in opposition to those of Dmowski. A compromise between a nation-state or federation would not be possible. We could just say that Dmowski could have been killed and never really unite the nationalist camp in Poland. The nationalists would have been more disunited, and thus a pro-federation delegation could have been sent to the peace conference. We could, however, do another thing. We could just say that Piłsudski would choose certain men that were closer to his idea, to his ideology, and he could then try to bypass the parliament. Of course, it may be a bit problematic, but Piłsudski was known to be not that democratic. It would create some issues, and the divide between the federalists and nationalists would become much bigger. But at the end we would not see a rebellion or a coup. Piłsudski was first of all at his height, Poland just won a big war, and a lot of land was taken from the Soviet Union. This new Polish state would not become a nation state, but they would at first give a huge autonomy to Ukraine at first. Belarus would follow suit afterwards. The states would not truly become independent, but they would be acknowledged as a nation, just as a different SSRs they were in the Soviet Union, for instance. Polish would still become the dominant language and the lingua franca, but Ukrainian and Belarusian, they would become a minority language. The parties would be even more split than in OTL between the federalists and the nationalists, and this time the federalists, they would unite moderate forces of other nationalities as well, while the nationalists, they would unite even some left-wing parties that would rather support the nation state. Poland would not pressure Lithuania for giving up Vilnius, but this time around, Poland would pressure Lithuania to become part of this Polish Federation or Neo-Commonwealth. There would be a war, the Lithuanians wouldn't be that happy, but Lithuania would not be absorbed into Poland proper, but into this Neo-Commonwealth, where they could even keep Vilnius. Due to the fact that this Commonwealth would take some form and shape, and also for the fact that Poland gained more land with the Treaty of Riga, Finland and the other Baltic states, they would agree to the Warsaw Accord in this timeline, and the accord would be taken more seriously. Hungary and Romania already had good relations with Poland in OTL, and a more successful Poland in this alternate timeline would be an even bigger motivation for them to join this construct that Poland was doing. Over the time, this whole project would not only be known as Commonwealth, but as Miedzymorze or Intermarium. Romania, Hungary, Latvia, Estonia and Finland, they would not be annexed into this new Commonwealth, but they would become part of this new political region that would develop within Europe. The fear against the Soviets and the Germans would still be big enough, and Poland would be seen as a very strong state and as a leader with connections to the UK and France. And overall, all of that would be seen as a guarantee for independence of Eastern Europe. Complications with Czechoslovakia were there. Not only would the Czechoslovaks want to claim the whole Chechen region, but Hungary would also try to claim many parts of Slovakia from Czechoslovakia. This means that the Czechoslovaks, they would for several years be at odds with the Intermarium until the Munich Agreement. Sudetenland would still be given to Germany, but Poland this time around would avoid trying to take Zaolzie. Instead, they would demand that Czechoslovakia rather joins their alliance or face an invasion. The remaining Czechoslovak state would have no choice at all, and they would agree with some minor border corrections with Hungary. The Germans would still invade the remaining parts of Czechoslovakia, but this time around, Poland and other parts of the Intermarium, they would assist the Czechoslovaks. Support would be sent from other countries such as Latvia or Estonia or Romania, and the Germans, they would be a bit surprised, and they would still make gains here and there, but they would not be able to just make a blitzkrieg. France and Britain, they would also declare war on Germany after the Germans would decide to not respect the agreements of the Munich Conference and after stepping over Czechoslovak and Polish territories. Italy would be on the sidelines in here, while the Allies would first watch and not do much. The Soviets would probably invade earlier in this timeline and try to take the Baltics mainly, but also Belarus and Ukraine. With that invasion, the whole alliance would also now declare war on the Soviets, and fights they would break out on the border with Finland, Estonia and the eastern borders of the Neo-Commonwealth. At this moment, the Germans, they could make some more considerable gains, but the Allies would now have to intervene, seeing that the Intermarium would never be able to win a two-front war. Germany would put up a good fight, but a two-front war for Germany means that they will always lose it. They would never come anywhere close than they did in our timeline, and with some more months of fighting, or perhaps a year or two, the Intermarium forces led by Poland, they would be able to take Berlin. During the war, it's possible that the Poles would pressure the Czechoslovaks and Latvians as well to completely join the Commonwealth and become autonomous nations, similar to the way of how France and the UK almost wanted to unite during World War II. Japan in this timeline would become an ally to the Intermarium alliance, and with Germany being beaten and improvements in the Intermarium's eastern front, Japan would rather attack the Soviets than Pearl Harbor, and with the Soviets not being part of the Allies in here, the Lend-Lease would not be an option. Moreover, without the Lend-Lease, a strong Intermarium and support from the Allies, a two-front war, the Soviets would either agree to a ceasefire or they would lose badly. And no matter what would happen, the Intermarium and Japan would come out as winner, and the Soviet regime would collapse. As a result, the Intermarium would have achieved the dream of Piłsudski, Prometheism. Prometheism is the ideology where all the different nationalities within the Russian Empire should have become independent. And in OTL, Poland already had a huge agenda and many activities where they supported the independence movements of the different nationalities within the Soviet Union. Now that the Soviets would have been beaten and even collapsed, it is very likely that the successor state of the Soviet Union would have an incredible hard time to become as powerful or even fractionally powerful as the Soviet Union was, and the Intermarium would become the strongest military, economic and perhaps even political alliance on European soil. Yugoslavia, Bulgaria and perhaps even Greece, Turkey and newly independent states from the former Soviet Union, they would join the Intermarium, the Miedzymorze. The UK and France would not be very happy about it, and we may see a split between the two sides. Will the Intermarium, with a bigger Poland or neo-Commonwealth, become one of the most powerful constructs in this alternate timeline, or will it collapse eventually? And that's where we leave it for now.
That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed my video. Be sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, support me also on Patreon and join my forum, forum.planetalthistory.ga. Until next time on Planet Alt History.